Every country has its own system of progress for economic development, and some countries are not as wealthy as they could be. But what makes some countries wealthier than others? There are three common ways this could be possible. 1. Material goods. 2. Natural resources. And 3. Human resources. Material goods. In order to make a city populated, we need to have an accurate amount of material goods. Some of these goods can be identified as bricks to build houses, cement to create roads or sidewalks, or even light bulbs to light houses. All of this comes in handy and attracts people to your country. Natural resources. Natural resources are a major impact towards human survival. People are most likely to live in a community when they have access to lumber, electronics or jewelry, or electrical power. Lumber comes from forests, electronics or jewelry comes from minerals, and electricity comes from water. Moreover, all the materials come from natural resources, so they are very important in order to make your community wealthier. Human resources. Human resources are very important to gain wealth. They are basically access to today's generation. This means that the natural resources used to build industries are usually processed through human resources. Human resources like the ones used to process lumber or transfer gold ore into pure gold. In order to work these human resources, well-educated people would be needed. With this business, many people would move in, thinking that the communities are well advanced, increasing the wealth in the country. If the material goods, natural resources, and human resources impact the country in positive ways, then the country's wealth will automatically increase. They will also offer proper jobs and boost their quality of life. Moreover, if the wealth is very high in the country, the greater chance it will get for the country to be wealthier than other countries.
Has there ever been a situation where you have to decide more than one thing that is very important? Well, having all the facts helps a lot. Governments do the same thing. Before making any decisions, they gather and analyze statistics. This helps them make decisions faster. One of these statistics is the GDP, Gross Domestic Product, the total value of everything that has been produced in a country over a year. To compare gross domestic product of more than one country, the currencies of each country are converted into US dollars. The USA has the largest GDP in the world, since it does a lot of business with other countries. China has the second largest GDP in the world because of its population, which is first place in the world, and it has extensive natural resources.
People, every day, develop themselves in some format, even if it's a small amount of development. For example, going to school and learning develops you academically. Going to work where physical labor is required develops you physically. From all the ways we develop ourselves, any sort of development which would assist you in earning money at any point in the future is labeled as economic activity. The examples given earlier are also examples of economic activity. Economic activity allows us to get what we need for survival via work of any sort, which translates into money. Though, economic activity also allows us to get what we want in the same way it assists us in getting what we need. The more economic activity in an area, the higher the area's economy gets. The higher the area's economy, the better quality of life in the area gets. This is because the government is able to serve the public more effectively with more money, which is what a higher economy results to. Unfortunately, many areas and countries are not yet developed, which causes poverty, though heavy amounts of economic activity is able to pull the developed country or area out of poverty and then start developing the nation or region. This is what many organizations are attempting to do, raise economic activity in an area to better the quality of life. An example of an organization which is trying to raise the economic activity is EVA, which is a lender of small loans to start businesses. The government of various countries are also in an attempt to raise economic activity. They are doing so via economic systems. An economic system is a country's financial structure. Economic systems are how governments conclude to how much of a resource should be distributed where and where to trade goods and services. Based off global economists, people who study the economy on a global scale. There are 4 different types of economic systems, which are named traditional economy, command economy, mixed economy, and market economy. Even though they have the same goal to raise economic activity, they each are very different. Briefly, traditional economies are seen in small isolated areas with no government control. For example, areas in Haiti. Command economies are economies where the people have no say and the government has full control. Example, North Korea. A market economy is where consumers and producers work with the government to decide where to trade goods and services and where to distribute resources. Ergo, the government has minimal control. An example is the United States. Last but not least, mixed economies where the government focuses on other issues and lets the public make their own economic decisions. Example, France. That is how economic activity impacts people by letting them get what they want and need, as well as bettering their quality of life.
4 economic sectors. Every economic activity can be divided into 4 different sectors: primary industry, secondary industry, tertiary industry, and quaternary industry. The primary industry is the industry that harvests natural from nature, like forestry. Secondary industry is the industry that uses natural resources to make consumer products such as packages for packaging food. Tertiary industry is the industry that provides services or sells goods such as accounting or retail stores. Quaternary industry is the industry that focuses on applications of ideas and knowledge such as software development or education. An example is styrofoam in all 4 different sectors. To make styrofoam, an oil company drills and pumps out oil. Tertiary industry is the industry where stores sell items in styrofoam packages to consumers. The quaternary industry is when styrofoam takes millions of years to decompose, so researchers are attempting to develop alternative ways to package food. You just learned about the 4 economic sectors.
Over time, geographers have found differences between economies that have been more developed and economies that are developed. Characteristics of developing economies are growing number of industries, few wealthy citizens, workers unemployed, low income, shortages of food or housing, low levels of technology, and many people who work on farmland outside of the city. While characteristics of more developing economies are many industries, many wealthy citizens, few workers, high incomes, abundance of food, good housing, luxury items, high levels of technology, and many people who work in the service industry. As the country's economy changes, industries grow and shrink as the population gets more educated. Over time, employment patterns are also formed. Countries that have a less developed economy than have a more developed economy usually have similar employment patterns. When the country's economy is less developed, most of the employment is in primary industry. But over time, when the country's economy becomes more developed, the primary industry employment rate went down. For secondary industries, there isn't a high employment rate when the country is less developed and more developed. However, when the country's economy is developing, the secondary industry's employment rate is higher. For tertiary industries, the employment rate is lower, and when the country's economy is less developed, and lower when the country's economy is less developed, and higher when the country is more developed. Finally, for quaternary industries, there is no employment rate when the country is less developed, and the employment rate is very low when the country is more developed. The country's economic development can also affect the citizens in multiple ways, such as life expectancy, GDP per capita, and access to medical care. When a country is less economic developed, then the country usually relies on primary industries, which is usually farming. An example is Burkina Faso, which is located in Africa. 90% of their workforce is farming, and it contributes very little to the country's GDP. The GDP per capita is $1,500 USD, and the life expectancy rate is also very low. Expectancy rate is 54.8, and their access to medical care is also very low. Out of 1,000 hospital beds, they only have access to 0.4. And countries with more developed economies have a better quality of life. Their life expectancy is 81.5 years, and the GDP per capita is 30,100 USD. Out of the 1,000 hospital beds, they have access to 3.2. That's all for finding economic patterns.
Trading. It has been a part of human existence for many, many years. It's a way other countries can connect globally, which is called globalization, as well as trade around the world. This is called global trade. What is global trade? Well, global trade is when countries around the world trade internationally for goods and services. Global trade can affect quality of life and the economy in both developed and developing countries. This is because they are receiving goods and services, which allows the countries to meet their needs when their local community cannot. For example, Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a developing country. In Bangladesh, many are forced to work 14 to 16 hours a day in the horrible and unsafe factory conditions, which leads to factory fires. Child labor, it's a major problem in Bangladesh. 12.6% of children ages 5 to 14 are forced to work in factories for very low wages. If you take a look at this graph, the blue line represents GDP per capita income. As you can see, over the years, the GDP per capita income is very low. This means that the economic health in Bangladesh over the years is not healthy. because GDP is meant as an indicator of economic health of a country, and since it is very low, it clearly showcases how the economy of Bangladesh is unhealthy. If the economy of Bangladesh is not healthy, it means employment rates would decrease, meaning jobs won't be available, and some jobs available would be gone because the economy cannot support it. This means that the quality of life in Bangladesh or other developing countries is very poor. But global trading can play a great role in improving quality of life. If we look at a real-life logical situation, Bangladesh would be trading one of their main goods for what they are need for. For something they are in need for, they would need this as a source for jobs, which improves quality of life for those who are in desperate need for a job no matter the price. As you can see, global trading can strengthen the economy, which the money can be used to support many needs the country has by increasing employment wages and jobs, also by improving working conditions, and much, much more.
Many companies were taking advantage of workers by paying them very low income in developing countries, and workers found this unfair. This is why a system called the Fair Trade was created to solve this issue and support workers who are not getting a fair trade, especially since they were working in such horrible conditions. The quality of life for these workers are getting affected due to them not getting paid enough. For example, they might not regularly eat, but the fair trade might let them eat regularly because of the extra income since they get underpaid their job. The fair trade option is a global trade which produces in developing countries get a fair price for products, and their workers also improves how they get treated. This is one of the many pros of the fair trade. Also, this can help countries become developed because of its citizens more wealthy. The next step is the country to improve. The fair trade changed so many lives in different ways. Fair trade helped about 1.4 million people make profit. Around 60 countries helped make the fair trade products have logos on it, and more specifically 2,700 products. A con is that the consumers that buy the product can, from the underpaid workers, lose money because of if the workers are gaining money, someone has to lose money. By losing money, the products are more expensive than before. The fair trade is mostly associated with food, but also available in different forms. One example is that the fair trade soccer balls are pretty popular in Canada and in some other countries.
When the fair trade option system was used, there were many perspectives. Mainly three important perspectives: producers, distributors, and consumers. The producers are the people who start the business and make the products. They believed it was a great way to support consumers' beliefs, and it was very beneficial to them when the fair trade system came out. When the fair trade came out, producers were fairly paid a minimum price, which was much better than before the system because they were getting paid low wages. Just like the producers were getting paid fairly, the system was a way to also support the workers, who contributed to the work and business of making the product. The workers were given income at a reasonable wage, just like the producers, which was very fair. Example, Bangladesh workers. The fair trade system improved quality of life because it gave them a reasonable wage to support their life. Example, the basic needs such as food, water, and shelter, and also clothes, which are a part of quality of life. Because of the system, it allowed workers to meet their basic needs, which contributed to improving quality of life because they were able to afford the main important needs to have the life with quality. Furthermore, distributors' point of view is another important perspective of the fair trade system. Distributors are the people who are selling the products to consumers. When the system was created, the distributors started buying fair trade products to support the system and sell fair trade products to support consumers' beliefs of ethically produced products. This was a main important perspective because if they didn't buy products from the producers that are fair, it will affect quality of life for the workers because they wouldn't be getting fairly because some perspectives are not agreeing with the system. If workers are not getting paid fairly, then the quality of life for them is not well because they do not have an income to support themselves as well as their families. This means if one main perspective doesn't agree with the system, it will affect quality of life for workers because they are not getting a reasonable wage like they used to. This is where the consumers come in the problem and the situation. From the consumer's perspective, they cared about the fairness and quality of life of others such as workers, which is why they look for fair trade labels when they are buying the products to show if everyone through the process of buying and selling is fairly paid, such as the workers. This means if they are paid equally, the quality of life is affected positively because they are receiving the right amount of money, which can be used to buy their needs, which is a part of quality of life, financial, material, well-being. As you can see, there were many perspectives on the fair trade system, which benefited quality of life in all ways and changed many people's lives by just receiving reasonable income.